One of the children actually called me Nana, and that made me feel, I felt comfortable. When he called me Nana, I thought, oh, he's not seeing me as a person above, he saw me as an equal, as his Nana. So it was nice.
I found Generation Wiser a very interesting experience. The children have been wonderful. I don't have grandchildren, and these are like my pseudo-grandchildren. I've enjoyed working with the kids, and they've been so well behaved, listened to what we say, and we've just done lots of things. And I'm hoping that the children have enjoyed it as well, because we've enjoyed doing it with them.
My name's Jackson and I'm 6 years old. I'm Mila Palmer and I'm 6. My name is Christopher and I'm 6 years old. I've been making animals and making some silly hats. They teach me how to tie really hard knots. I just like getting my hands messy. So now I'm getting up my hands and around and around and around and around and around and around and around. And it was very fun. My favourite part is making the owls.
I've enjoyed every Tuesday that I've come in. It's like my second family. Yeah, it's very, very entertaining.
He gets the ball down towards Mars circle.
5 games, Essendon needed to start well. Izzard found Mann on the first.
You look up with those angel eyes. I remember what I'm fighting for. Oh, the victory cannot be denied.
Well, I can remember back in the 60s I came down to Windy Hill with my father to watch Essendon and Richmond play football, and I can remember standing in the outer up on the hill and just surrounded by so many people I couldn't see a thing. You know, there were just people everywhere, and what I remember more than anything was just the tribal noises that came out of the crowd. It was just amazing, just amazing.
I remember as a kid, 16 years old, walking to the ground to watch the footy, and just the roar of the crowd and just the big crowd that it was, or were in those days. Always got the big crowds here. It's just always something that's always stayed in my memory, I guess.
I've got childhood memories of coming here, watching football and watching cricket. Like many other teenage sports kids in the area, I was able to play some junior football matches here as a kid.
It's the sporting hub of Essendon. You've got football, cricket, bowls, croquet, you've got the swimming pool, it's health and fitness.
Settle down a while. Tell me everything you're praying for. Oh, the answer will not be denied. No, the answer will not be denied. Every day when the sun arises.
But it's like an oasis in the suburbs.
I've been here for 140 years. It's certainly a space that's absolutely loved by our community.
Sport's such a fantastic part of any community, and it includes people from all sorts of backgrounds as well and brings them together. And for me, Windy Hill has always been the epicentre of that community spirit here in the municipality.
There's always something going on, there's always people on the oval, there's always activities. It's just a good place to be around.
Well, I think most of the members, most of the residents of Essendon don't realise what an asset they have here. And it's really, when you think about how many members there are in the croquet club, the bowls club, the cricket club, there are really a lot of people using these facilities, but we've got space for more.
So tonight we have the inaugural first ever Rose Street Neighbours Night Out, which is a really special event. It's been a pretty tricky year. A lot's gone down in this neighbourhood. Tensions there between whether rail was going over or under or how that all works. And look, mostly it's built now. It's been a pretty hard year for the traders, but they're amazing and it's really brought them together. And they've survived in a way that the council and the traders have worked together to celebrate and to really think and more than celebrate, help create what this space is going to be, not just for them, but for the whole of Moonee Valley.
What do you love about working on Rose Street?
Just sense of community.
Everyone's on a first name basis. We know what everyone gets up to. Everyone knows each other's business.
It's quite nice and open and relaxed, so I think that for sure.
The people here are absolutely lovely.
And how fantastic is it to actually have this road closed and be able to celebrate with each other and with our neighbours and our local traders here. I think it's fantastic.
We can be a lot louder if you want. Don't worry.
Don't worry, he's loud, yeah.
Welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting of Council for the 9th of April 2019, which is now officially open. A warm welcome goes to the members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight at the Civic Centre, as well as those watching from home via live stream. Thank you for joining us. As well as being live streamed, the recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the galleries are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones please be switched to silent mode during the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, spirits, community members past and present. I would also like to extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. So, councillors, firstly, I have received an apology from Councillor Sarace for tonight's meeting. Can I please have a motion that the apology be noted? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. Do I have a seconder on that? Councillor Byrne? Thank you. Are there any questions relating to that? No, I should put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you, that is unanimous. I will note that Councillor Nation is on an approved leave of absence for this meeting. Councillor Sypek is seeking to amend his approved leave of absence so that a meeting of the place naming a special committee does not have to be deferred, and a decision can be made, and so that a decision can be made that will enable a development to proceed. So I must thank Councillor Sypek and also note that he is recovering much quicker than he first thought. So if we can amend that approved leave of absence, and Councillor Marshall and Councillor Cusack are also seeking approved leave of absences. So councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that Councillor Sypek has his approved leave of absence amended to 26th of March to 8th of April inclusive. Councillor Marshall will be granted leave of absence from the 2nd of April 2019 to the 12th of April 2019 inclusive, and Councillor Cusack be granted leave of absence for the meeting on the 23rd of April 2019. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Byrne, thank you. Councillor Seconder, Gauchi Marici, thank you. Any questions? No? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. So I'd now just like to ask Councillor Sypek to please join us around the table. Welcome back, Councillor. Deputy Mayor. Okay, so councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes for the ordinary meeting of council held on Tuesday the 26th of March 2019 be confirmed? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. Seconder. Councillor Cusack, thank you. Any questions regarding the confirmation of minutes? No, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? No. Thank you. Councillors, before I ask if we have any presentations tonight, I'd just like to acknowledge correspondence and a gift I received on behalf of council from the Mayor of Matsuruba. I've said that incorrectly. Matsurubara City in Japan. Mayor Sawai expressed gratitude for the exchange program operating between our two cities, which allows high school students and city officers from Matsurubara City to visit Moonee Valley to experience homestay and school tours, which have had a great impact on their education and career choices. So I received a lovely letter from the Mayor just detailing how the exchange program has been working and how well our two cities have been operating jointly in that, and he has just sent us through a gift of some lovely hand-blown Japanese glasses. So just wanted to record that officially so that just to make the presentation official, and thank the Mayor for his kindness in sending that to us and just letting us know what he thinks about the exchange program. So we thank the Mayor of Matsubara and all the people involved in that exchange program. So thank you. Also, before I ask about any other presentations, Councillor Cusack has sought my permission to make a personal statement. So I'll just ask Councillor Cusack if you would like to do that.
Yeah. Councillors and colleagues, at the last council meeting there was a debate in relation to a notice of motion on the issue of school zones. In the course of that debate, when I was speaking, I used a simile that is probably best described as old school. There was no swearing involved or anything like that, but I have since been asked by a member of the public to reconsider the language that I used, and I'm quite happy to retract that simile and not use it again. I realise that in 2019 some people are very concerned about the subject that it raised, but at the end of the day it didn't, one way or the other, it doesn't detract from the debate and the quality and the issue that I was trying to make, which was clearly in support of Councillor Byrne and her motion, which is to point out that while the concerns of people in the Avondale Heights area about school zones are very, very important, critically young people graduating from grade 6 along the Mount Alexander corridor are also subject to some pretty tight school zone issues, which are forcing them to go outside of the municipality to get an education.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cusack. Councillors, do we have any other presentations tonight? I don't believe we do, actually. So I shall move on to petitions and joint letters, and I don't believe we received either tonight. So that brings us now to public question time, and we have questions from one community member tonight. So I'd now like to ask Helen Papadimitriou to come to the lectern to read her first question, and then I will ask the relevant director or manager to provide a response. Thank you, Helen.
So my question is regarding the proposed hub at Flemington on Debney Meadows Park. My question is, what are the number of car parking spaces proposed for each of the 3 options that you currently have on the website, because it's not obvious?
Thank you. I'll ask Ms Reiter to provide a response to that.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Each design for Debney's Park prioritises walking, cycling and public transport over the use of public vehicles to encourage sustainable transport methods. And we will achieve those sustainable transport uses by improving the walking and cycling paths and limiting the provision of on-site car spaces to approximately the same provision as we have now, the 87 spaces. So the car parking will be designed to minimise encroachment on open space and to maximise walking and being active. The 3 options being considered for on-site parking provision are option 1, 50 car spaces under the hub, 32 car spaces opposite Debney Meadows Primary. Option 2, 60 car spaces on the park's western side and 30 car spaces opposite Debney Meadows Primary. And option 3, 56 car spaces directly under the indoor sports courts and 32 spaces opposite the primary school. So, and we're updating our website to provide that information to everyone.
Can we just second question too, Phil?
Okay, thank you for that. Second question is, why is the proposed Flemington hub to be built on Debney's Park and not at the current community centre location, which has existing access to Mount Alexander Road, trams, parking spaces, and all of that underutilised land behind and around it?
Thank you for your question. The current community centre plus the pavilion are actually already on Debney's Park. So we're simply moving it to a more appropriate location, a sunnier location that offers a much better interface to the open space of the park and removes the barrier between the Moonee Ponds Creek and Debney's Park. And by creating a building-free interface between the park and the creek, we seek to optimise opportunities for an ecologically appropriate response to the creek, and also allow that overall open space to present as both bigger and much more functional than it currently is, dissected by the current community facility. The reason the land behind and around the existing community centre is underutilised is because it is so noisy there from the proximate traffic, making it feel really hostile. So as a really good urban design principle, you seek to put the community facilities away from those hostile environments. And so by housing the facility more remote to that noise, the community will be able to enjoy the indoor-outdoor sort of interaction through the new hub facing onto the park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is reports from special committees, and there are none tonight, so we shall move to our first report. And the first report on tonight's agenda is delegations to determine Moonee Valley Racecourse land planning applications. So, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Lawrence?
Yes, the motion is as we follow the officer's recommendations. Sorry, couldn't get the words in.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Any questions, councillors, regarding this report? Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to speak. My reasons for agreeing with this recommendation are we have 6 Moonee Valley councillors with a current conflict of interest, leaving a majority of 3 with decisions to make about the largest development in Moonee Valley City Council history. And given we have difficulty arranging these meetings so that it can coordinate the 3 councillors both for briefing details and for the Moonee Valley Racing Club Planning and Assessment Special Committee meetings, this potentially creates delays that can occur as a result of only one councillor being absent from the Planning and Assessment Special Committee. And this creates a frustration for the Moonee Valley Racing Club, the council's planning department, other councillors, the other 2 that are on the committee of the Planning and Assessment Special Committee, and the community of residents in Moonee Ponds. Continued delays with decisions will only see Moonee Valley Racing Club applying to VCAT for timely decisions and to leave Moonee Valley City Council at the mercy of those members. The state government via the panel have effectively taken the major planning controls over this Moonee Valley Racing Club application away from council. Council's role is one of an overseer and the planning and scrutiniser and the planning and scrutiniser, with that role being an important role. It is in the interest of all parties and stakeholders in the projects to have both input and effective planning measure put in place in what will be the largest development, as I've stated, in Moonee Valley City Council modern history. I therefore encourage my fellow councillors to revoke the instrument of delegation to the Special Committee and to modify the statutory planning protocols and allow the Development Assessment Panel to decide on the Moonee Valley Racing Club development application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Cusack?
I have some particular concerns about the motion on the basis that for over 9 years, the community, working with their councillors, have struggled with many, many issues and have presented those in numerous forums and in different ways to both this committee, council, and also to other committees that have been formed to make decisions about the racecourse and the likes. And for us to now find a way at the last minute to obviate the role of councillors in this is a problem. I appreciate that the reasoning behind this is that there has been an issue about trying to get a quorum organised because of illnesses and other leave that councillors have had to take without being able to give much notice, and that this has brought us to a point where we need to address a particular matter that is coming up and the clock is running down on it. I don't believe, though, that we should be making this a permanent arrangement. I don't believe that we should be putting this out there beyond the term of this council and setting up an arrangement that will be a decision-making point for all future proposals that have come up through the Moonee Valley Racing Club against the against the footprints and so on like that, and the plans that have been agreed. And I honestly believe that there is a time now where we can if we just relax for a couple of seconds and think about the fact that we need to inject the councillors back into this so that we can ensure that the council, ensure the community voice is really heard. And I worry that that is being sidestepped. There is a better alternative that was considered last night. I know that it's not a popular one, but simply in this case, yes, I'm happy enough for it to go to a DAP meeting and suspend for this one particular case. But I think that we should be reverting back to the other and have this as a plan B should this situation arise again.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Does any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Gatchie-Morici.
I was hoping to move an amendment to the motion, please.
So it would be a formal amendment, if you'd like to read that out.
Yes. I was hoping to amend item B through the addition of the following provision: planning applications and/or determination of council's position for VCAT in relation to applications over the Moonee Valley Racecourse may be assessed by officers despite fitting into the above major project definition or deemed to be controversial as per section 5.33 below at and insert an open session of
an open session of Council's Development Assessment Panel. Are there your words up there, Councillor Gatchie-Morici?
an open session of council's development determined under delegation, and then this provision will have effect, sorry, I'm just pulling back up. This provision will have effect until such time as there is a quorum of non-conflicted councillors, so that it's not in perpetuity. Just so the understanding of that.
Could you please repeat that last sentence?
This provision will have effect until such time as there is a quorum of non-conflicted councillors. That's all right. I'll just forward it to you. Sorry, I thought I had Alison.
We'll just wait a couple of minutes just until that is typed up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a seconder for that formal amendment? Councillor Cusack? Councillor Gatchie-Morici, would you like to speak to the formal amendment?
Yes, thank you. I will speak just to the formal amendment. I think that if the DAP is the preference of, ends up being the preference of the group, that I would then like to see there be a transparency and a visibility of that session for the community who have had such a view of this development over time that I think it would be disappointing for us to run those sessions behind closed doors and not have the community have the opportunity to see how those matters are determined. And equally so that it's not made in perpetuity, so that once we have a quorum of councillors who are not conflicted, the decision can come back to the group of councillors.
Thank you. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to that formal amendment?
Well, I would have preferred something else, but this is a middle ground that makes some sense. The proposal that we had beforehand, it tied up the council irrespective of when people aren't conflicted, and that addresses this particular problem, and it gets to the opportunity at least for us to be much more upfront and open with our community, and I think that is a critical part of this process, and I'm rather dismayed that it had gone the other way, and at least we're pushing back and finding a way forward. So I really commend councillors to think about this, because our community has been significant in this. We've all worked hard, haven't we, with the Friends of Moonee Ponds, the Save Moonee Ponds group, pardon me. We've seen where their work has produced the evidence that started the questions around the heritage things that had to be saved on site. It was their questions that talked about the water levels and table down at the bottom end near the freeway. It was their questions that continued to talk about the amenity of this whole area. And it was them that actually started up the process. If anybody is sitting around here who has any recollection of it, we were confronted with a plan that was put up on a board that was part of a process of consultation, that it was just it. That was what there was. We had no starting point that was around a negotiated position. We had a position put to us. And that wasn't put here at a council meeting. It was through that consultation process that was held down at the racecourse. Now, they've come a long, long way, the racecourse, and they've accepted all of these community groups and so on like that, and that community input, and people have a standing within all of that. And so why wouldn't we be continuing to keep faith with that? It's a relatively straightforward thing. And of course, I don't want to see, we have an election coming up in 18 months' time or whatever it is. New councillors' faces might be around the table, and current councillors who are conflicted will be coming out of that 5-year tenure at some point. So why would we reduce the opportunity for all councillors to have an opportunity to be back in the race again in some time in the relatively near future?
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak to the formal amendment? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Could I please ask a point of clarification through you?
Yes.
Can I please ask through governance or through whoever is appropriate if there's any concerns with it being an open session?
Ms. Writer? Yes, Ms. Writer might answer that.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. We have run a DAP previously in open session, and whilst it wasn't something that officers were necessarily comfortable with doing, it's certainly something that we can do, and are happy to do whatever's required to expedite the process.
Did you wish to speak? No. That's okay. Any other councillor wish to speak? Okay, so I shall put that formal amendment to the vote. All those for the formal amendment we're talking about, just a formal amendment. All those for? Councillor Gauci Marici, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Byrne, and myself. Councillor, all those against? Councillor Sypek and Councillor Lawrence. So that formal amendment is carried. So it brings us back to, that becomes a substantive motion. What is before us now is a substantive motion. So now we move back to debating the substantive motion. Councillor Gauci Marici hadn't yet spoken, so did you still wish to speak on the substantive motion?
Yes, please. The amendment, thank you councillors for supporting it, was quite important to me because I, in my heart of hearts, still have a real level of discomfort with delegating my decision making to the DAP, so I won't be supporting the substantive motion. For me, I do genuinely acknowledge how hard it was to get a meeting with the three of us, and things happened at the last minute because someone was sick, and it means that we were close to 60 days and it would go to VCAT, and I understand the rationale behind the decision making going to DAP. But for me, as one of the very few councillors left without a conflict, I just think it's really critical for us to retain a role in decision-making processes wherever we can and not delegate them unless we absolutely have to. So I would have been, my preference would have been for it to come to us still, and obviously that can't happen, so I won't be supporting the substantive motion.
Thank you, Councillor Gauci Marici. Would any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? No other councillor wishes to speak to this motion? Okay. No other councillor wishes to speak, so I shall put this substantive motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Lawrence. All those against? Councillor Gauci Marici and Councillor Cusack. So that is carried. The next report on tonight's agenda is the proposed budget for 2019-2020. Councillors, do I have a motion? Do I have a motion for the proposed budget, councillors? Councillor Sypek. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Oh, what's the motion? Sorry.
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gauci Marici. Are there any questions regarding this motion? No. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the item?
I think everyone's pretty much well aware of what the budget incorporates and what it doesn't incorporate. I'm very comfortable with the way the budget has been produced by the officers and happy to move the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Gatchie-Murici, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I will just briefly. I think for those who read the proposed budget, you will notice that we are in an environment of rate capping, so the costs of delivering our services and our infrastructure continue to increase, but the revenue to pay for those hasn't. Some of the significant items that we deliver within the operating expenditure, which I think some of our community may not realise, there's 161 million in operating expenditure, and that includes things like home care, personal care, respite care for older frail adults or people with a disability, childcare, kinder, maternal and child health, roads, parks, footpaths, bike paths, drains, sports fields, community buildings, planning and building services, support for business and traders, waste and recycling. I think sometimes when you talk to the community about the budget and how we spend our money, there's not a strong understanding that it's so much more than just roads and rates and rubbish. So for me, I think that we have made decisions as a council to stay in some of these services, and that's important for the community to recognise that that means that we need to think about how we spend our money. In terms of the capital works, there's 65 million there. I'm sure one of the other councillors will speak to you further about that, but the bit that I was really pleased by is that we're not borrowing money for this. I think the budget, you will find, balances those competing demands for services and infrastructure with an ability from us to pay for this and to be fiscally responsible. Certainly it's a proposed budget, so it will be out for feedback, and we welcome the feedback of the community over the next few weeks, month. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The proposed budget 2019-20 is responsible and doesn't increase borrowings, as Councillor Gatchie-Murici alluded to, and debt levels for the council's financial year. The surplus of funds at the end of the financial year are 12 million. However, my concern is that this budget is also coupled with the can you believe it? Pardon, I've just got to get my figures back up. Is also coupled with the Strategic Resource Plan 2020 to 2023. And this is the major concern I have. Planned capital works expenditure over the forward estimates to 2023 sees our debt levels increase markedly, with 2021 borrowings at 19.7, 2022 at 25 million, and these are all separate figures, I might add, 2023 at 15 million, bringing us just under a debt level of 60 million. Similarly, our staff costs are predicted to increase from the current 2020 year of 89 million to 2023 at 95.5 million. With the impact of rate capping on Moonee Valley City Council income, these extra capital works and staffing expenditure cannot be sustained in the forward estimate budgets. This to me is a major concern and leaves me pondering, how can we pay down this sort of debt level and still maintain our excellent council services for our ratepayers and residents of Moonee Valley? With the proposed capital works projects, including East Keilor Leisure Centre, Flemington Community Centre, Nidri Library, Moonee Ponds Creek improvements, and the many other project initiatives, we have a lot on our plate going forward. I note that under the Fair Quinte, I have trouble pronouncing this, Quinte Border Up proposal, one of the policy states that develop a financially sound long-term capital works program informed by comprehensive project evaluation criteria. Rings very true to me. By 2023, Moonee Valley Council will be paying 2.25 million in bank interest that we currently don't pay. To me, this is unacceptable and a high-risk approach to council expenditure. I therefore cannot accept the budget for 2019-20 I can accept the budget for 2019-20, but cannot endorse the strategic resource plan that is coupled to it for 2020-2023. And as we are both voting on both documents in the one recommendation, I will not be voting in favour of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Cusack?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, it's been pointed out by Councillor Gauci-Marucci how vital the budget is and what opportunities it presents to our community. I suppose that there's no point in obviously going over all the points, the highlight points that Councillor Gauci-Marucci made, except to say that I need to, I suppose, address some of the concerns from my perspective about the budget that have been expressed by Councillor Lawrence, and I know other people who will when they view this. Councils can and must go into debt at times, or otherwise there is no opportunity for the development of new and large projects that will meet future demand and the future requirements of our community. We have a growing community that we know is expanding much, much quicker than official estimates by state government. We not only have an ageing population in certain areas, but we have a growing population of very young children in lots of other areas. We also know that when you have an ageing population, that changes quite dramatically, and that the vacuum that is there is filled by younger families and people who are trying to establish themselves in their community in other ways. So therefore, we've created a plan in our community that was endorsed by over 3,000 different types of inputs from members of the community, called Moonee Valley 2040. And in that, there are a number of policies and strategies, and there are specific plans or actions that support those policies and strategies. And we need to keep an eye on where the community said it would like to be over a period of time. And the key things that were coming out in that were obviously about our health, the vibrancy and the greening of this community, and a need to address the decay of our infrastructure that is prominent in particular parts of the municipality. Major points being obviously the East Keilor Leisure Centre and also down at Flemington Community Centre. Now, in this budget, the hub is still going at Flemington is still going through the process of developing up what it looks like. East Keilor is getting ready to stick a shovel in the ground, and so that's where we're at. But this is not money that is dead money. The fact that we actually are borrowing money into the future and doing this, can I have a short extension please, Mayor? Yes. The fact that we're looking to repair roads, to improve our capital works in so many ways, to do the water harvesting, to look at the drainage, to work on those matters around our parks and gardens and our other facilities, means that we're investing for the future. We can't just keep things as a status quo. And places like East Keilor Leisure Centre, what do you want? A great big hole in the ground? We need to get something moving on that space. So these buildings will, as I said, not be just a mausoleum with no return. They will all be businesses and activate in our community and provide opportunities for not just a bottom line that is found in dollars and cents, but it's also a bottom line that is about our environment. It's a bottom line about the return on our social return. It's a bottom line on the human capital of this community. A healthier, better place to live, a place that attracts more people and makes business makes this a better place for business to operate and for people to live in. And that's what the budget is trying to achieve. That's where we're going to. we have a solid foundation for doing it under 2040, and the fact that we have to have a resource plan for the next few years outside of that means that we're also being very upfront about sort of where the costs are and how we're trying to manage that. And yes, it will be tough for a while, but we will move through it.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Budget time's always a fun time around this chamber where we have some quite heated discussion. But we're in a really interesting situation. Obviously, we've got decreased revenue, increased operating expenses, increased capital, something that around this chamber we've been so favourable upon for so long. And eventually it comes to a stage where we go, where are we at? Now, that stage in the 1920 budget, I still feel like we're in a good position. So I will be putting my hand up with the officer's recommendation. I absolutely hear what Councillor Lawrence has said, but I do think that there is still room to move over the years. What we're doing is we are putting out this year's budget and somewhat of a plan, but things, as we know, can change quite quickly with quite considerable dollars. So I hear what you're saying about $60 million in debt, but I think that it is important that we put this budget out for the community, and we hear on Tuesday the 28th of May submissions from people in the public, because at the end of the day something has to give. We've got $65.6 million in the Capital Works program for the upcoming budget, which is $8.4 million to upgrade our local road network and improve traffic flow, $5.3 for drainage and renewal works, $5.5 invested in parks, streetscapes and open space, $28 million to progress the East Keilor Leisure Centre, $2 million for stormwater harvesting at Rosehill Park, $1.6 million to upgrade play spaces, picnic facilities, pathways and landscaping at Woodlands Park, $600,000 to renew library books and furniture. So when you look at all this, this looks great, and I think that the community will be really happy to see this, but we have to make some really difficult decisions around this chamber going forward, and there's no doubt about that. And Capital Works is, you know, at the end of the day, the community have put us in these seats, and we have to make hard decisions sometimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I think everybody has spoken. Councillor Sypek, would you like to move the reply?
Yes,
close?
yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to make this crystal clear. We're not voting on the budget tonight. What we're doing is we're voting on a draft that goes out to the public. And then we're going to be receiving submissions from the public, and there will be a bit of tweaking. So this is not the budget. We're just voting on allowing the community to have a look at the budget and then to give us their comments and their replies. So we're not voting on money or anything like that. We are voting so the public can have a look at the budget. And then on the 11th of June, after all the submissions have come in, that's when we'll be voting on the budget. So this is to give the public the opportunity to have a look at the draft.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Sypek, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Gatchi-Marici. All those against? Councillor Lawrence. That is carried. The next report is entitled the 2017-21 Council Plan Quarter 2 Progress Report for October to December 2018. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Gatchi-Marici. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack. Thank you. Are there any questions regarding this motion, councillors? No? Councillor Gatchi-Marici, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, just briefly. I think it's fairly self-explanatory. There's only 10% that either haven't started yet or aren't on track for the quarter. For me, as with most of the other items that I speak to, I tend to like to give just some bits and pieces that those who don't read the full report might like to know we do. So for me, the ones that were interesting are around the immunisation program. The secondary schools has been over 4,500 and the infants have had over 662 vaccinations administered. Having a child who is at the age maternal and child health, there's been 6,864 consultations, 1,192 hours of early intervention and 1,755 hours of integrated family services. The 2018 street tree planting program is now complete and has had almost 2,700 advanced trees planted across the city, which is a 20% increase on previous years. And I think that really nicely aligns with our targets around canopy cover under 2040 and the awards that we've been nominated for. And just in terms of the statutory planning processes have been streamlined to improve the way residents are advised about lodging objections, how they're advised about development so they have more information and the application from the outset, and a number of online forms have been improved to simplify completion by applicants and residents.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchimurchi. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to the motion?
Briefly, Mayor, and thank you for the invitation. Look, this report forms, if you like, a test of where the council has moved to over the last 6 months of its operation in this financial year, and how it's placed against what we said we would do in this chamber at the middle of last year. And the documents that have been produced since then, in terms of our plans and the actions, as I referred to earlier in the budget motion. And so the report covers 3 particular areas. It talks about major initiatives, those other initiatives and actions that are identified through our annual planning process, and again, what we're doing in relation to implementing those initiatives to make 2040 actually happen. And when you sit down and start thinking about this, it's not a bad call. I mean, there are 255 specific actions that are being implemented in this community right now across both community services delivery and also in the capital works area. And 197% of them are on track. We've actually completed a few of them, but they were the smaller and more upfront ones that probably were a little bit more that low-hanging fruit. But there are only a very few that have not started, and at this stage there are 17 out of that total of 155 that are off track. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't get back online. It depends on the flow of money, depends on things like tendering and so on like that. It's also weather conditions and the likes of that may intervene in some of those issues, or the availability of contractors, etc., etc. So we're still confident that after 6 months of looking at those 255 projects that we'll actually get them close, if not all of them, over the line as agreed. And I suppose that's what I think this report says is really that we're doing, and the council is doing, a pretty good and a very responsible job in delivering what it said it would do.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Would any other councillor like to speak to this item? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just quickly, obviously, the things that were off track, I don't want to just talk about, sunny things. Just, the things that are off track are obviously not ideal, and the community probably want to know about them. But as Councillor Cusack did touch on, a lot of them have just been delayed to Q3, often due to staffing levels, and also there's the ERP project that has changed significantly. Most of those things have actually come through the chamber at some stage beforehand, but overall we are doing an extremely good job. I think most people will notice a big change in terms of how we're activating our neighbourhoods, our individual neighbourhoods, as discussed in MV 2040. In Q2 there was the launch of the Green Spine, which was long awaited in Airport West, and I went along to that one, and it was really good to see the local community enjoying such a beautiful space, even though it was long awaited. And there has been plenty more in Q3 and going forward, and I'm looking forward to watching our plan be delivered over the next little while. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Okay, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next item is response to notice of motion number 2018-15, council use of herbicides. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to move a motion in the way of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek, thank you. Are there any questions regarding this item? No. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will briefly, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. Look, the jury is still out on the continued use of glyphosate chemical, which is widely used to kill weeds in our municipality. The alternatives, as pointed out in the report, are a little bit more expensive. However, they are options we are looking at, steam weeding for one and organic biodegradable plant oil being the other. And all I can say is it's good that we as a council are taking a proactive role in looking at alternatives and trialling the use of these alternatives and potentially seeing if we as a council can move away from the reliance on glyphosate as the only form of weed killer. There have been previous UN reports about possible issues with glyphosate, and I guess it's something that, you know, if it costs a little bit more and it makes the community safe, then I guess it falls totally in line with our 2040 vision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sypek? No? Any other councillor? Councillor Cusack?
I just want to commend Councillor Lawrence for bringing this forward and raising the issue, because it is a critical one for all of our community in terms of things like where we live and how safe is our community after a contractor has been through and done their job. And because it's unseen, you don't know, and when you don't know, you may in fact suffer down the track. It also has a significant issue, obviously, for the health and safety of our workers. And I know that this is the initiatives that are being worked through right now have the strong support of the ASU, their union. We've also had some trials in the Flemington, Ascot Vale, Aberfeldy, Niddry and Strathmore area around developing non-glyphosate weed control, and waiting to see where those go to. I noticed that the steam weeding, of course, is a very prominent thing that's used in the city of Yarra, for instance, and the likes of that. And in places where community and weeds are sort of close together is a really interesting call when you have a whole policy based around the regreening of our municipality and how do you increase the tree cover and all of those sorts of things. There are many other issues that fall to the side of that accompany it. For instance, the control of weeds and so on like that. And given the number of sporting grounds and those sorts of facilities that we have, we just can't go out and do what my granddad would have done, which was just go out and murder the bloody weeds, and that was that. And we have to be much more sensible about these sorts of things. And contamination of our soil and the likes of that is not a legacy that we want to pass on to future generations.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is titled Walter Street Communication Facilities, agenda item 10.5. Councillors, do I have a motion, please?
Well, I'll move the officer's recommendation as the motion.
Councillor Cusack, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Byrne, thank you. Any questions, councillors? No. Councillor Cusack, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I realise in moving this, I just stuck my head in the lion's mouth. There's no doubt about this, because this has been a matter that's been fraught for this council for years, and it's actually interesting the way this is presented as part of the report. But when the Urbex site was being built all those years ago down there in Ascot Vale, one of the early questions was always about the shifting of those telecommunication towers. Now, at the time, it was decided not to shift them on the basis of the technology wasn't right, and there was another attempt back in 2017 to look at it again and to come up with an answer, and now we have virtually the same sort of issue still at this point, and that is that we're not going to get a place that is in that neighbourhood that is going to be able to, where these towers could be relocated to, that will necessarily provide the coverage that is expected in terms of the telecommunications. However, I also am looking forward to seeing how this is unfolding and how the issues are progressing, and I'm looking forward to receiving a further report as the recommendation, as the motion says, from the completion of the public notice process, and how the land should unfold, and receive also a report about the completion. That's a repeat of the land. Sorry, in relation to Walter Street and to Optus points 5 and 6. So this is a difficult one, but it is one where we need to start that statutory process, because obviously both community and the agencies are expecting us to do something. And noting finally that the telecommunications industry, most of its governance through government, it resides within the federal sphere, and that we're guided. We can provide input and guidance, but we can't necessarily change federal legislation in respect to some of these things. So it's up to us to try and act on our best, to the best of our ability, with in framing a case and talking to government over it. But we've got this issue before us, and we need to consider how we're going to manage it. And we've got the 15-year market rental, all of which, as I said, I'm not terribly comfortable with, but it looks like it is what it is.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This has obviously been going on for a while, but I suppose I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation in this case, because it will be coming back to us. It is going out, and people can put in their feedback as required, and then a report will be coming back into the chamber. I'm mindful that there is only one Moonee ward councillor here at the moment, so good job, Councillor Cusack. And hopefully by the time it comes back, the other two ward councillors will be here, who can also add into the debate, and we can discuss the feedback. I'm mindful of it being for a period of 15 years. 15 years ago, I think of 5 phones were like back then, and you think in 15 years' time they will be so different, and does it have to be as long a lease? So that might be something that comes back and that can be discussed further, but this is the officer's recommendation, and I'm looking forward to coming back to us in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this item? No? I should put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item is 10.6, and it relates to the mayoral attendance at the Wellbeing Cities Forum. Councillors, do I have a motion, please? Councillor Sypek? What would you like to move?
Happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Lawrence? Thank you. Any questions, councillors? No? Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, look, this is a very important attendance by the Mayor. We are the only council from Australia that's been nominated for an international award. We're shortlisted of one of 4 contenders for this international award, and I think it's highly appropriate that the Mayor of the city, our #1 spokesperson, be there if we happen to be very fortunate and win this award.
Thank you. Councillor Sypek. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and I concur with my fellow councillor Sypek on his thoughts. As a finalist in the World Wellbeing Cities Forum, Moonee Valley is now on the world stage for its world-class programs, projects, policies and services. This is a huge and massive endorsement and recognition by not just Australia, but by the USA, Canada, Europe and every other country in the world that's involved in the forum. We've been chosen as one of the 16 cities out of the 28 countries as a finalist, and maybe, just maybe, a world winner. Let's hope. It's fantastic and truly a statement that puts Moonee Valley City Council on the world map for putting well-being of its residents first. I fully encourage the Mayor to attend this forum on behalf of all the people of Moonee Valley, of all the councillors, the council officers of Moonee Valley City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Would any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am speaking in support of this motion. It would be embarrassing for Moonee Valley City Council to win the award and not have the Mayor there to accept it. So I'm fully supportive of this. I would also like to make mention that to Kate McCackey and her team, who have obviously done their work so well that we're actually got to this stage. Got to this stage. It is amazing, and they should be very proud of them. And I know that as a council we are, and I'm sure that as long as that gets passed back to them, because this is something that we're very proud of, and I'm sure the community are too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Cusack.
I think the most important thing in this is that Moonee Valley Council is showing, by being nominated for this award, to be way out in front of just about anything else that's happening in Australia. We are best practice, and that is an extraordinary thing to be able to say. That other people and other councils and other politicians and other people in their private lives are now looking and will look more to Moonee Valley through this award, because of our involvement in this award, for leadership across the country. So I'm hoping that, irrespective of what happens in Montreal, that this becomes a stepping stone for Moonee Valley to talk about how things can be done and can be done well. As Councillor Byrne points out, it's a real tribute to our officers about what they've done. But when we think about sort of how that whole notion of creating and enhancing an urban forest can occur, and the work that is done in terms of the data analysis, the spatial mapping and all of those sorts of things that have occurred that underpin this and make this actually work, and then at the same time not just sort of sit back and say, well, it's a grouse idea, we'll go ahead and do it, but to actually say that tie this to the very well-being of our community and get people enthused and connected to it from that as a central point. And that's the key trick, that too often good ideas sit as on the shelf but not connected to the community. And then people are sort of saying, well, where's consultation, where's all of this and that? But the reality of this is that if this gets carried off, everybody in Moonee Valley has the right to say that we are really, really proud of getting this up and running. It's a long-term project. It means that we've got to have a lot of stick-at-itness, and we've got to be prepared to fund it and make sure that it works. But the result will be substantial. Cooling our suburbs in a natural sort of way, greening our suburbs in the best possible way, retaining our opportunities for water conservation and the likes of that are all critical parts of this that will go to making living and a lifestyle of Moonee Valley people absolutely fabulous. So well done to everybody concerned, and also fabulous notion of being world's best practice is not a bad thing.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor? Councillor Gatchimerici?
For Bureau being the only councillor who hasn't spoken to an item, I've learnt that one once last year. I would actually normally have been the first councillor to say, oh, overseas trips and spending money, but do you know what? This is such an incredible opportunity for us as a council. I'm so pleased that you're able to attend. I won't wax lyrical about Moonee Valley 2040 because I think everyone has heard me to the nth degree wax lyrical about how incredible it is as a strategy and the ambition it gives our city, and the awards are recognising that, so I hope we win. What I did want to highlight, my day job in HR, I talk about that it's one thing to attend training, it's another to bring it back and put some learning into practice. And I think that part B of this recommendation is where that opportunity really lies, for the Mayor to come back and talk to us about the learning outcomes and the benefits to council and issues that we can consider is another real benefit of this conference. The Mayor doesn't have to pay to attend the conference, which is really exciting as well, the benefit of being a nominee. So I really genuinely look forward to what happens when you come back and the things that we can learn and the other things that we can implement, and seeing the other nominees and their incredible strategies and seeing what they win on the basis of, and being able to have some of those ideas come back. I'm really excited for this opportunity. So,
thank you, Councillor. Okay, everybody has spoken. So I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour?
Madam Mayor, could I just ask for a point of clarification?
Yes.
Exactly when is the decision made so that not only councillors and council staff, maybe we could somehow advertise that to the community?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Are you asking for the date now?
I don't know whether you know it now or...
19th.
19th.
Yeah, that's the actual...
But that would be Canada time, of course.
Time is, yes. I don't know about the time.
Okay, thank you.
But I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. The next item of business is notice of motions, and we have 2 notices of motion tonight. First notice of motion, number 2019-10, CCTV on number 57 and 59 trams. I would like to call on Councillor Gatchimerici to present her notice of motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Take notice at the ordinary meeting of Council to be held on 9 April 2019. It's my intention to move that Council write to each of the following. 1, the Minister for Transport Infrastructure, the Honourable Jacinta Allen MP. And 2, Yarra Trams Chief Executive Officer, Mr Nicholas Gint, requesting that all trams in Moonee Valley are equipped with CCTV cameras in order to improve the personal safety and security of all public transport users.
Thank you, Councillor Gatchimerici. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Byrne. Any questions, councillors? No? Would you like to speak to the motion, councillor?
I will, thank you. I think we talk consistently about 2040 and the themes of 2040 being the 20-minute neighbourhood, and how we would really like to encourage more people using public transport, walking, and having accessible neighbourhoods. So for me, this really aligns nicely with that. I was really concerned last month when I learnt that one of our inspiring young women from the Women's Leadership Program had been assaulted on a tram, and it was a 57 tram. What concerned me further than that, though, was when she went through the process of speaking to the police and trying to make reports, we learnt that CCTV is only on new trams. So there isn't CCTV on any of the old stock, and Moonee Valley being bordered on either ends by the 57 and 59 trams, which are both old stock, means that none of our trams have CCTV. So for me, this motion goes to the heart of increasing safety for our residents and visitors and workers when they are on public transport in Moonee Valley. If Yarra trams would prefer, they are welcome to replace all the old stock with new stock, but I think CCTV might be somewhat more achievable. So I would really like to see some commitment made around, if we're going to be given the old stock of trams, that there's still an increased level of safety and security for our passengers.
Thank you, Councillor Gauthier-Muricci. Councillor Byrne, would you like to speak to that motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think that this is actually quite self-explanatory, and I think Councillor Gauthier-Muricci has put up a good argument for as to why it should be supported, so I'm happy to put the motion.
I might just ask if anybody else wants to chat or discuss, just because it's you know, it's a good notice of motion.
Can I say for you?
Yes. Would any other councillor like to speak? Yeah. Councillor Sabeck? Yeah.
Look, I commend the motion, and I totally agree with it. But I just need a point of clarification. The old stock trams, do they actually go from Moonee Valley, then go into the city, and then come back again? And are the same the old trams, always only used in Moonee Valley, or do they go to the other side of town and come back?
I might ask for an officer to answer that, if anybody knows that answer. Do you happen to know, Ms. Freitag?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I take those trams most weeks, and I'm 99.9% sure they're the same trams going up, back and forward, back and forward.
So they just go back and forth. Okay, no, because I was just concerned if they went from, let's say, the Moonee Ponds depot, and then that night they ended up somewhere else. That means then all the old stock would have had to have CCTV. So I just wanted to make sure. And the other thing, I'd like if you could put in the letter that Moonee Valley will bear no cost if they introduce these CCTV cameras.
I might have to find
an amendment to the notice of motion saying that Moonee Valley will bear no costs for the installation of the CCTV cameras. Because the trams aren't Moonee Valley properties, they're either state government.
So we're advocating, this notice of motion is to advocate to have them installed.
Yeah, but at no cost to Moonee Valley Council.
Well, they're not our property.
Yeah, but I mean, we could probably get a letter back from the state government saying, well, if you're prepared to put in $5 million, they'll do it.
Okay. In order to do that, Councillor Saipek, it would most likely have to, it would have to be through a formal amendment. So if you wanted to have that added into this notice of motion and the letter to go out, it'd have to go up as a formal amendment, and you'd have to get a seconder for that.
Yeah, I'd like to put up the formal amendment at no cost to Moonee Valley Council.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that formal amendment? Councillor Lawrence? Okay. So we might add that in here. Probably at the end, yeah. No cost to council, okay. Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Lawrence, okay. So we've got a mover and a seconder for that formal amendment. Councillor Sypek, would you like to further
Look, I think it's very self-explanatory. We only just discussed the budget only half an hour ago, where we were all concerned about costs and where we're going to get the extra funding from, and I just want to make sure that we don't end up with the bill for this one as well, even though it's a great notice of motion. I'm fully supportive of it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sypek. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to this this formal amendment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and only just to say that yes, we don't want to be paying for the CCTVs on PTC, Public Transport Victoria's, Public Transport Corporation's trams, or Yarra trams as they are. It's the responsibility of the state government, not local council. Thank you.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to this formal amendment? Councillor Gatchamucci?
I will, and the answer somewhat aligns with the first question before. For me, there is old stock of trams all over Melbourne, not just in Moonee Valley, and I think that we are drawing conclusions we don't even need to draw. The responsibility for infrastructure sits with Public Transport Victoria, and I wouldn't think that we've ever talked about funding arrangements when we've advocated for other items on their infrastructure. We don't suggest that we won't pay for the traffic lights when we advocate for traffic lights on freeways on the Buller Road overpass. So I just thought it was a really interesting piece to add to the end. I'm not suggesting it's terrible, I just think it's superfluous.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to speak to this formal amendment? Councillor Byrne?
I completely understand why you would put this formal amendment up, but I am mindful that in a letter that we're writing it could look potentially tacky. So I think that it would be known that we wouldn't fund CCTV cameras on a tram. We're purely just requesting it. So I'm just mindful that it's an ask, and as Councillor Gatchamucci said, we wouldn't be saying, oh, but we're not going to fund traffic lights, we're not going to do this, that or whatever. So I just don't think that it's necessary. And if they come back to us saying, yes, we're happy to have them and this is how much that would cost, I would imagine that would come back into the chamber anyway and we could make the decision then. So, and because it might be something that we would consider then, but to rule it out at this stage, I just don't think it's necessary in the initial letter. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak to this formal amendment? No? Okay, I shall put...
I'd like to close.
No vote of upon an amendment. Sorry.
All
right. So I shall put that to the vote. All those... Now we're just voting on the formal amendment. All those in favour of the formal amendment? That is Councillor Sypek and Councillor Lawrence. All those against the formal amendment? Councillor Gatchamucci, Councillor Cusack, Councillor Byrne, and Councillor Sharp. So that formal amendment is lost. So now we go back to the substantive motion, where most councillors have spoken. Councillor Cusack has not spoken.
Oh, sorry. Okay. I just a couple of points in speaking in favour of the motion. I do travel on the 57 tram reasonably regularly, and certainly on the 59 tram 2 or 3 times a week. So I can assure you, Councillor Sypek, that they don't go any further than the T-junction of Flinders Street and Elizabeth Street. Otherwise there would be a very interesting incident. The issues that I wanted to raise are that in particular the 57 tram, which looks like it's going to be travelling up and down that track for quite some time and not potentially changing, and it goes through what might be colloquially called colourful neighbourhoods, where there are many interesting characters on them. And so that I can understand why many people will feel uncomfortable or unsafe in respect of that tram, and that there would be some serious comfort given by having CCTV. The other part of this is that that tram also goes past 2 places that are regularly attended by very, very large crowds, and where it's not just a matter of safety from the point of view of unwelcome antisocial behaviour, but the reality is that you've got a lot of people getting onto a tram, and their safety has got to be considered. So racing and the showgrounds events, they may be music matters, there might be all sorts of opportunities. And so it just makes sense to have this and have this motion. And it would seem to me, irrespective of whether the trams are realistically only on our line, or whether all of these older trams get fitted out, is irrelevant. I mean, I would prefer to see all of them fitted out, because I think that, you know, all of the community deserves that opportunity. But clearly our letter would be about, but the initiative is a Moonee Valley one, and we want to see it implemented for our community and our community safety. And I think that that's paramount in it. And I'd just like to congratulate Councillor Gachi-Marucci for bringing that one along to the chamber. I think it's really well deserved. It's really well thought out, pardon me.
Thank you, Councillor Cusack. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I applaud the initiative for this motion. The number one form of transportation on trams is mostly women, more so than men, funnily enough. And that in itself tells me there is a great need for their safety, particularly when travelling on either the 57 or 59 tram. And it also alludes me to the point that why do we have such old trams on our lines out this way? The other tram lines seem to enjoy the luxury of the U-Butte low-level trams that we don't seem to get on our line, and that in itself is another question for another day, I admit. However, I do applaud the initiative. I do know people have been assaulted on trams, and I'm not one of them, but I think if they'd had some coverage or the fact that the perpetrator of these type of assaults were aware that there were cameras, maybe it would not have even occurred. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, everybody has spoken. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next notice of motion is from Councillor Lawrence regarding the Clock Tower mural, notice of motion 2019-11. So I'd like to call on Councillor Lawrence to present that notice of motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Take notice that at the ordinary meeting of Council to be held on 9th of April 2019, it is my intention to move that a subcommittee of Council be formed to consider and recommend an appropriate art mural design for the Pascoe Vale Road wall of the Clock Tower building. 1, the committee to comprise of the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and 3 other councillors or less. 2, the committee to meet once a month for 3 months and provide Council with a report on the design, the cost and the method of choosing a local artist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sypek. Thank you. Councillor Lawrence, would you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have a blank canvas on the Pascoe Vale Road wall of the clock tower. Not only is it blank, but it's an eyesore that is quite frankly boring and ugly. I don't know if anybody's taken the trouble to look at it, but it's not even worth looking at the moment. I would like to see something that transforms that eyesore into something that incorporates the direction the wall is facing, which is of course the Moonee Valley Racing course. Last year we had for the first time history of a racehorse, Winx, winning the Cox Plate for the 4th time ever. Never before has this been done and probably never will happen again. This was the initial idea that brought me thinking a mural on the clock tower wall could include Winx, the Wonder Horse, as well as some other iconic aspects to our great city. The wall is huge. I had the good fortune recently to visit the drought-torn Wimmera region in support of local farmers. While I was there, I was shown an amazing silo art that decorates the old wheat silos around Warracknabeal. These pieces of huge art have become major tourist attractions in the Wimmera region and are bringing people and tourist dollars to that area. We can do the same in Moonee Valley and attract people to our own magnificent piece of clock tower art. I believe as councillors we can create the style, the format and use of local artists to create this attraction for our city. I look forward to councillors' support for this motion and I will be putting my hand up to be one of the councillors on the subcommittee immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor. No, I fully support this notice of motion. I think it's a great initiative. We do have a blank canvas out here on Pascoe Vale Road and I'd love to see it be have a colourful mural on there as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Cusack, yep.
I think that it's really worthwhile as a starting point, and Councillor Lawrence has done a very good job there, because it's not being prescriptive to the point that this is a done deal, but it is a deal that needs to be done, and that it's something that needs to be progressed, and this motion just recognises that an idea should be able to be floated, that the cost and the method of choosing a local artist, etc., needs to be worked through, and that councillors have an opportunity to have input into this. I think that I love your reference to Warracknabeal and Rapanyup, which is a place that I know very well, so I just want to stick that one into the people from the Wimmera and support them. But on the other, and I think that your analogy is quite right. It does have the opportunity to create a very important reference point in our community, and it's an alternative to looking at things like gateways and stuff like that, and it's an effective way of actually marking our territory, and I just believe that makes really good sense. So I'm more than happy to support this motion. I think it's a terrific starting point for something that could be really worthwhile.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor like to speak to this motion? Councillor Byrne?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lawrence, for bringing this into the chamber. Whilst I love the idea and I will be supporting your motion, I am mindful that we just moved a budget in which this was not a part of. So I'm sure that as it is only going out for draft, that it is only a draft budget, that it can be added in at a later stage, but as councillors we'll have to think that if we're putting in a certain amount of money, then something will have to shuffle around. So I'm looking forward to lighting up the back of the clock tower. Is that okay? Oh, thanks. And yes, but I think that it could be an absolutely fabulous, it is a fabulous blank canvas, and I'm looking forward to seeing what will be on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor? I'll put that? There's no one speaking in dissent, so there's no right of reply when there's no one speaking in dissent.
I just wanted to clarify then, as a point of clarification, that this is only a recommendation that will come back to council.
So point of clarification.
Thank you.
As a further point of clarification, will it come back before we endorse the budget?
I could probably answer that. It's to meet once a month for 3 months, so most likely not.
Okay.
But it could. Oh, Ms. Reiter, would you like to answer that question?
Sorry, through you, Madam Mayor, since the funding envelope's yet to be determined, it's probably better to come through once the funding envelope's determined as a variation to the Capital Works program.
Okay, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. The next item of business is urgent business. Do we have any items of urgent business, councillors? No. Are there any do any councillors have anything they'd like to report on in their roles as delegates? No. So the next item of business is confidential reports, and there is one confidential report this evening. So councillors, can I have a motion that the meeting be closed to the public under section 89(2)(d) of the Local Government Act 1989 to consider confidential reports? Mover, please, Councillor Byrne. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Cusack, thank you. I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. So this is where we say goodnight to members of the public gallery and those watching our meeting via live streaming. So thank you for your interest in tonight's meeting, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.